Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Liberty Libations number 15. Joined by some familiar faces and one unfamiliar face, Mr. Brad Binkley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We're going to start how we've been starting the past, 2 months, which is talking about the Great Create, which is coming to Georgia in May. It's the Libertarian Convention, but we're relabeling it as a DIY Freedom Festival. You can get your tickets now. I believe they're $42 for adults and free for kids 16 and under. We have two new additions to the lineup. Mr. Adam Nutter, comedian, is doing a stand-up show, I believe, on Saturday night.
Very funny comedian.
Very funny,
I've seen him
hilarious.
several times.
Yeah, saw him once in Virginia. He was on the show last week. Dude is hysterical. And then we have a new band, the Bib City Ramblers, Americana bluegrass country band. So the lineup is getting pretty awesome at this point. Aside from my face being on there, it's pretty good.
That's cool. That's out there where they do the Georgia National Fair, isn't it?
I have no idea. What is the Georgia National Fair?
It's
Yes, it is.
one of the biggest and best fairs in the country, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't go to many fairs.
Well,
Is it kind of like just a state fair with like rides
it's like,
and stuff?
so there's like the Gwinnett County Fair, which that's where they're going to bring all the carnies that you probably don't want to find in a dark alley anywhere.
Gotcha.
And then there's the Georgia State Fair, which is much bigger and more professional. I think even Trump might have spoke there
Wow.
within the past year or so. I know Garland with Georgia Voter GA spoke at a rally they had out there. So I remember I went to college in Milledgeville, so they used to have bands. I remember seeing Alabama in Perry, Georgia.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, I guess it's in that neck of the woods, according to Steven. Well, first off, and really the only thing that I have lined up for us to kind of talk about tonight is this video and these comments made by our future president, Mr. Vladimir Zelensky.
The US will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying. God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. The U.S.
So Zelensky is telling us that we and our children have to go die in Ukraine for their ridiculous war.
It's that narrative, man. It's this either or propaganda. They're pushing that. See, I call this a propaganda jubilee they had over the weekend because they were celebrating the 1 year anniversary. It's like they're 1 year, and they had Biden propagating this message where the guy David Muir, he asked him, he said, "Well, what about some growing number of Americans that are wondering how long we can continue to send all this aid?" And Biden goes, "I don't know anybody asking that question except the mega Republicans." And it's the same theme of, we got to give them all our money or it's evil. It's just this global coordination of propaganda. I don't know how people can continue to buy into it.
But would it make you feel better if you knew that Janet Yellen also agrees with?
I feel much
with
better.
it?
Yes.
Did you guys? Well, as far as the propaganda goes, did you guys see the Maddow clip of the Rage Against War?
I didn't
Oh
see
yeah,
that.
we covered that one last week. It was
Yeah. So
an
she took
embarrassment.
these angles of where you could only see a couple people and focused on the same guy with a Russian flag in like 6 pictures.
Yeah.
Like it was just like the purest hit job you've ever seen.
Right, that's right. Yeah, never
And
mind
then, like,
all the
float-
pictures of like kids doing the Nazi salute in Ukraine in the background
Right.
of all their reports.
Yeah, but then you've got pictures at the actual event, which everyone that I've talked to that was there was saying 3,000-4,000 people.
Yeah, I heard around 5,000 total.
Yes, and then there was a pro-Ukraine rally the next week, and it was like 300 people, I think, in their picture. So
But-
they were pumping that up as
yeah, no, they probably made it look like 1,000. So,
Right.
but that's just kind of how it goes. Yeah, I mean, we did that whole Maddow clip last week, but the clip we got cut in actual footage of the event while she was saying it was a tiny event. It was only like Nazi sympathizers and all these, and it was just tons of people all about not going to war, and it was awesome.
It's crazy, man. It's this. These people who are supposed to be anti-war are just they're bloodthirsty for war.
Yeah, I don't really understand when
It's part of this party flip,
yeah,
over the
when did
past
that flip happen?
couple decades. I don't know, but it was the opposite
Well-
when I was a kid with like Iraq and everything. So
But
Yeah.
it's not
also,
long.
Yeah, but it's also interesting because the left wing that even claims to still be anti-war, there were organizations within that you would expect to be able to come out, and they didn't want to because the Libertarian Party doesn't check their boxes. We don't buy into the ESG, the climate change narrative,
God, I hate ESG, man.
pro gun,
Yeah.
all the stuff that
Well, I mean, we'll go along with
paying.
climate change stuff so long as it makes sense for business.
Mm.
There's a certain level where it's like, I'm not going to cut my leg off for something that's not going to have any effect at all in the actual air quality.
Right.
And then meanwhile, China is just spewing stuff unmitigated into the jet stream. And
You're not gonna cut your nose to spite your face, kind of thing. Like,
well, exactly. If it makes sense, it's good for business. But once we cross that threshold where you're trying to force me to do things,
yeah,
then we have a problem.
I
And also,
agree.
this studies have clearly shown that unless China actually does something to stop what they're doing, like there's just zero possibility of ever limiting emissions, of ever turning back. So like, why start implementing mandates and all this BS on people who are just trying to live their lives when there's an entire country that isn't at all interested in the regulations that we have?
It's a control mechanism. They set goals that are unreasonable and all of this stuff, and they're not ever really concrete, and so they can continue to change them. Because if they were to ever set goals that could be accomplished, then that would take their power away. Yeah. And so they're never going to do that. They just keep moving
Half
the
of
goalposts.
it's a psychological battle of like the commitment and consistency and like getting people to just like stay in line with things that don't make logical sense. But
yeah. Hey, Alden, your audio is a little choppy.
Is it?
It sounds like there's some, I don't know, something wrong with your mic or something. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know.
Yeah, every time it's only when you talk. It's just when you talk. It's like, yeah. It's
Really?
Weird. Yeah, I don't know why.
Unplug it.
But you can even see this stuff on Google Earth in China, where they make certain cell phones, things like that. Because I think I forget what plant it was, but there's just this 80-acre lake behind the plant. That's just this barren wasteland, and you can actually zoom in on Google Earth, and you can just see like the whole area is just desolate and gray. You can go in the street view, and it looks like Mordor. Like it's just awful.
Yeah, I was looking at a Google Earth of America the other day, and it was just a United States-shaped Ukraine flag.
That's perfect. Yeah, and like no one brings up the fact that like we're mining all these different minerals down in the Congo and all these places in Africa. Like as long as the people in America are subjected to regulation and all these things, it doesn't matter what happens abroad. Like it has nothing to do with actual climate change or anything like that. It's literally just all about control.
It's deindustrializing the West. I mean, that's really the only way. If you start reading through the lines, everybody's supposed to sign on to this stuff, but China and India are exempt, and they're 2/3 of all the pollution on the planet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It creates a little bit of a problem.
Right. The social aspect of that ESG stuff too. Really, what they basically do is they have BlackRock pay the companies more money than they're going to lose from all the customers they alienate. So it's worth their while to do it.
Oh yeah, and like I mean, these 15-minute city things. Have you seen this over in like Oxford in the UK? What they're doing over there, and like all the like protests that are happening, and people like ripping out stanchions out of the ground because like barriers will go up during certain parts of the day, or if you get too close to something, they'll make it so where you can't go any further. It's crazy, man.
It is nuts, man. And it's like they talk at Davos in the World Economic Forum. They did the last time. I can't remember when the last one was, but it was that one. And then this one, the main theme last time was they have to rebuild trust in society because nobody trusts them anymore. They all are working together, the elites more and more, but the level of distrust worldwide has grown. So they have all these panel discussions about ingraining trust in children and winning back trust of the African American community. So they're trying to come up with all these ways to get your preacher in your hometown to spread their propaganda, or get your grandmother to spread their propaganda, people that you already trust. So I see that as a good thing, that they recognize that we don't trust them, and even though the media can control things and make it look like we do, I think people are more awake to this than it seems sometimes.
I agree, and I think that somebody was saying this on a podcast I was listening to the other day, that they're trying to implement these things as quickly as is humanly possible before the majority of people understand what's going on.
Right.
The problem is, I think they overplayed their hand with a certain virus, and people caught on too quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. You seen Colbert, his reactions to the news about where the virus might have come from. He did back-to-back monologues where he's just really upset about how these organizations are saying that it came from, might have leaked from a lab. And it's, I mean, I know the guy's a paid propagandist, but I'm like, at what point are you going to get back to doing comedy? At least trying to do comedy and trying to, instead of being CNN late night. It's just weird, man.
God, he used to be so funny. I miss old Colbert.
What happened? Yeah.
He got bought, man. As soon as he took that late night show, he
I miss the guy that
puppet.
for president got sponsored by Doritos.
What?
Oh yeah, and the FEC was like, "Stop that right now," because like he got up on the podium and did a campaign speech, and he's like, "And by the way, while you're voting for me, you need to rip into a nice crispy bag of Doritos."
This is like Wayne's World. Like, what's happening?
So he like promotes that his so there's this article of an interview he did where he was just like, I just got tired of them sending me all these resumes of these white male writers, and I told them no more white male writers, no more white writers. So he promotes how like his writers are a bunch of feminists. And it's just like, it's obvious when you hear his material, it's obviously written by a feminist, and it's a male delivering it.
So it's Rachel Dolezal back there now, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
I've got. We're gonna continue on the whole war thing. I've got another video. It's 2 minutes long, so.
I just watched this one.
Yeah. Sit back and relax.
I am concerned about risk and escalation. And whether or not, I guess the question comes down to whether our battlefield aims, I know our war aims and Ukraine's are coincident. I hear what you're saying. The outcome needs to be the return of,
it's the most boring interview of all
Ukrainian
time.
Sovereignty and return of territory, including Crimea. Are our battlefield aims coincident?
I think in this next phase, in terms of what the Ukrainians want to do on the battlefield and what we are enabling them to plan to do, yes.
Good. I mean, because there was a piece in the New York Times.
Have you ever seen a more slower paced interview?
Again,
did you hit
quote
half
unnamed
speed?
Administration officials? I realize I've been around. This isn't my first rodeo. I understand that
Clearly.
Who said that our reluctance to provide Ukraine with weapons to strike Crimea directly is softening. And the article goes on is that the logic, according to these officials, is only when Ukraine shows Russia it might lose Crimea will Putin get serious about negotiating.
So I'm going to go back to the way I framed this before, which is that there is a drone base in Crimea where the drones that the Iranians have given
Why is she
Russia
smiling?
are being launched from. There are command and control sites
It's
in
the Botox
Crimea that are essential for
Doesn't help.
Russia's hold on all of the territory, including the land bridge.
She's doing like a
There
Kamala
are
Harris.
Those can't be real eyebrows.
mass military installations on Crimea that Russia has turned into essential logistics and back office depots for this war. Those are legitimate targets. Ukraine is hitting them, and we are supporting that.
So if there's any doubt that this is only a war between Ukraine and Russia, like that just killed it. Like
First
it's
real
a war
question.
between us and them. Like it's ridiculous.
First
What's
real
up, Nick?
question: why do people keep telling Newland secrets? Because she keeps saying it to the press.
She
Yeah.
does. She
Yeah,
really
and
does.
this Aaron
You know.
David Miller guy, I'd never seen a 95-year-old with an emo haircut before.
Hey, it's pretty hip. I kind of like the haircut.
You know, Newland's the one who got busted plotting the coup on the phone with the
Yeah.
famous FDEU phone call.
And she's still working in a position of power, and it's like it's right there in front of your face. I didn't know she was so atrocious to look at. That's like I'd heard her so many times, but God, her image fits her words. She's awful, and I just
The
hope
lighting
these-
didn't help out either.
No, not at all.
No.
You know what I see some of these people do sometimes in these panel discussions is, so you saw that one guy, the emo guy, he had the bookshelf behind him. Sometimes you can tell that they will they'll green screen a bookshelf behind them.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that's green screened.
I think
Actually,
that one's real, yeah.
I don't
That
know.
one might be real.
I have seen this before though.
It might be real.
Yeah,
It might
the
not
one
be.
that I'm thinking of is the guy who was Barack Obama's propagandist.
Valerie Jarrett.
No, not Valerie Jarrett. It's the dude who's married to. God, my brain just like blanked out on both of these names. I'm like the dude who's married to the woman. You guys know
I
who
hate
I'm
when that
talking about.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, I get it.
No, Samantha
It's
Power, her
works
husband.
sometimes.
Samantha Power, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, what I find interesting is like they recently, when they've been talking about how Putin is like, if he continues the war and continues advancing, that's when he's most likely to use nuclear weapons and his nuclear capabilities. And they're like completely flipping like how logic works.
Right.
You don't use the nukes if you're winning a war. And so they're constantly like contradicting themselves by saying he's losing the war, but he's going to use nukes.
Well, I think
Because
Dave
he's
Smith
winning
was
the
calling
war,
this
like-
out on his last podcast the other day, where it's like, oh, Russia's getting crushed, and then, oh, Russia's gonna march all the way through Europe if we don't stop them there.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It just-
Yeah. It makes no freaking sense. And then just full on stating that we are supporting Ukraine, like, and we'll like back them when they drone strike or destroy some of Russia's bases and launching sites and all this. It's like, what are we doing?
You know, just to get on the record with this, and to get a little conspiratorial,
Sweet.
I feel like with the drop in public support behind this, I expect we see some sort of false flag incident, gas attack, Buka part 2, something like that.
I've been worried about
the
it.
next
For a
few
while.
Yeah, I
weeks.
think that's why they're using that they keep calling it this new intelligence technique where they're transparent about the intelligence and they go ahead and say it out loud, you know.
Right.
I think it's like we're going to say it out loud so that we can put it in people's minds, and then we'll do it, and then we'll blame it on, because we already said Russia was going to do it. We'll say that Russia did it. They did this
Yeah.
with at the beginning of the war, where they said Russia was going to conduct some false flag attacks, and then
Right.
they just started doing it with China also when it comes to giving weapons to Russia or drones, having drones be a factor in the war. It's just a way to set up a narrative. This whole thing is just about narrative control. There's the truth of this is just, so far we're not getting anywhere close to what the truth is going on. It's maddening that people like will just blindly side with really just one side or the other without asking any questions whatsoever. I mean, I have a guy who I know who is a Jewish guy who, when I ask him if he's okay with the fact that the Azov Battalion is fighting on the side of the Ukrainians, that he will just continue to change he'll just start insulting me. I'll be like, but the Azov Battalion, and he'll insult me, and then he'll send me a link that says, well, according to this, only 100 Azov Battalion Nazis are fighting with the Ukrainians. I'm like, so you're okay with 100 of them fighting with them? Is that?
It's just the ones that appear in pictures with the with all the insignia.
Yeah.
I've had
the
a lot of
only ones.
luck with showing people, just ask them to look into who overthrew Poroshenko, who put Zelensky in power. Go back to when that happened, and you can see news reports of actual Nazis goose stepping and doing the salute in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see
Oh,
John McCain
absolutely.
on stage with one of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jon Stewart gave an award to one of them in New York. Jon Stewart, a Jewish guy, gave an award to a Nazi.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's a great look. To to go back to what you were saying about the strategy of like saying something's going to happen and then you doing it. This is not new because, I mean, this has been done for centuries, but like they did this during the first Trump presidency and the Biden deal when they kind of reversed the order, though. Like Hillary had been communicating with Russia during the first one. They accused Trump of that. So it's accusing your enemies of doing the exact thing that you're doing. It's a freaking great strategy if you can get away with it.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Especially when you
and who wrote the big biopic on that? Lee Strobel, right?
Yes.
He wrote a big article, and there was some Alexander Chalupa guy over in Ukraine, and I mean he was doing all the media tours, just rattling on and off about this stuff back in 2012 about you guys. Ukraine is about to be a big problem. He's like, we're up to a lot of mischief over there.
His name was Alexander Chalupa.
Right.
Yes.
Sounds like an order at a Mexican restaurant.
I know. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. You know what I think they're doing with this whole, one of the things they're doing anyway is I've thought from the beginning, I thought that this was the first war of the Great Reset from the beginning of this whole thing. And so there's been this debate. So the debate can never be, should we continue sending all these billions of dollars worth of aid? It's never that. You're a mega Republican, is what he said. He meant MAGA, but he said mega, which we know Biden thinks that is a domestic terrorist. But the debate can be, should we send the F-16s or not? So you can have a respectful debate about that, because it's like, why don't we just go ahead and give them the weapons to destroy Russia already, is what the establishment Republican argument is. And the reason that they don't do that is because if the war ended quickly, either way, if Russia just ended it quickly, or if we gave them all the weapons to end it quickly, then Ukraine would not be fully destroyed. And if you don't fully destroy Ukraine, you can't build it back better into the world's first e-government with that infrastructure. And Ukraine committed to being the world's first e-government. I think it was back in 2020. And they're an experiment. They're a testing ground where everybody's data and everybody's information is connected to like a central hub of their government, which they want to spread as part of the Great Reset, I believe.
I agree with this. I actually think that there's a lot of reasons why having the global eyes on this arena is for establishing a new status quo in like the digital age.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And like, if they don't completely destroy it, then how is BlackRock going to get all their money?
Right.
Yeah, we can talk about that a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, because what was it just yesterday that there's a $7 billion REIT that they manage, REIT, real estate investment trust, and they blocked the investors from pulling any of their money out of it because there's a lot of BlackRock assets that are about to collapse, and all they're doing is shutting off trading for it.
Interesting. Well, last week we put in a Rachel Maddow infused video, so we're going to do the exact same thing this week with a fake Maddow with Jimmy Dore talking. It's freaking great. Let's see.
Is there a real Maddow?
No.
And isn't it just like America to ignore the Nazis that are suffering here at home trying to buy eggs while we fund Nazis in other countries? It's unbelievable what's happening. This is really about World War III. And why aren't they investigating it? No, they won't even ask them a question. Cy Hirsch's article came out detailing how they all blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And the American press won't even ask the people he named in that article a question about it. They won't ask Victoria Nuland. They won't ask Jess Sullivan. They won't ask Anthony Blinken. In fact, those people won't even give a statement about it. You know who will talk about it? Kirby, the press secretary at the White House. Because I'm sure the people who did the investigations have a pipeline right to Kirby, but not to Anthony Blinken, not to Sullivan, not Victoria Nuland. By the way, these are the same people who lied us into the Iraq war, lied to us about Libya, lied to us about Syria, dropped so many bombs in Syria they ran out of bombs. They're doing the same thing. America is the world's terrorist. We have 400 military bases surrounding China. We provoked this. People don't know that the CIA got in bed with the right-wing Nazis in Ukraine to overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine in 2014. We had a peace deal. It was called the Minsk Accord, and then they violated. Who
She's
violated?
agreeing with everything.
Ukraine
This is the best she's ever been.
telling the Donbass, which are the Russian speakers in the eastern part of the Ukraine, and that's why Putin had to be provoked to invade to protect those people. Nobody will tell you that. Everybody who talks about every other news station, by the way, you're the only one doing this, and I applaud you for letting people come out and tell the truth about what's actually happening in Ukraine.
This video's
Other stations
amazing.
when I watch what they do is they start the history of Ukraine from Putin's invasion. They never tell you that we overthrew their democratically elected government in 2014. They never tell you that they didn't stop shelling the people in the Donbass. They never abided by the Minsk Accord. They don't tell you that the former German prime minister said that the reason why they did the Minsk Accords in the first place was so that Ukraine could build up their military to get ready for this war that they're provoking. So the American people are waking up. There was a big, okay. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
That's funny.
I don't even know what's real anymore.
Yeah, that's funny.
I mean, that honestly, that might be the best way to take people down these days. Is like edit a completely false video, like Jimmy Dore saying everything perfect on Rachel Maddow's show. It was amazing.
It took me a while to realize it was a loop.
That was good.
Even knowing ahead of time.
Yeah, I used to do all these fake interviews with like Biden and Trump and whatever, where I would try to make myself. I was obvious that it was fake though, but I did like a short one the other day of Biden because I was testing out YouTube Shorts.
Yeah,
and I found a clip of Biden laughing during this interview he did with David Muir, where he's like, ha, 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 ha. And I just said, do you care about the citizens of Palestine, Ohio? And he goes, ha, 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 ha. And I just got so many people that called me like a Russian propagandist, and like, oh, I'm like, a Russian propagandist for that? I'm like,
wow, it's quite a leap.
What the heck?
I know, it's messed up.
Well, and apparently there was a chemical in the vinyl chloride. I forget the exact name of it now, but it's the same stuff that makes Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like the most toxic form of that chemical possible.
Yeah. Were you around for that episode of Libations, Steve? When we
Maybe
talked
not.
about that? All right. Yeah, we talked about that and phosgene and all that stuff, that half these chemicals were made to, or like are in ingredients in those weapons. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And it's safe air and safe water.
Yeah,
Most
it's like
deadly
a combination.
chemical weapon, and I think World War I or II, one of them.
Yeah, so I was
one.
just gonna say it's like a combination of the chemical weapons from like 3 wars pushed into one event, like.
Right.
Which, by the way, is where chemotherapy came from. The mustard gas in World War One.
Really?
Yes, because
I don't
there
know
was
about
the Italians were throwing their people already on their deathbed. So if you have a terminal illness,
that.
get to the front, and they were coming back home, and their cancer was gone.
Well, maybe that'll be
Yeah, I
a
don't know
headline
about
out of
that.
Palestine, Ohio. Dozens of people cured from cancer.
Right. Yeah, there you go. But then 10 years later, cancer's back with a vengeance, and it's metastasizing 3 times faster.
Interesting. So is that? I don't even know. What are the drugs that they actually use in chemotherapy?
Well, so the one in particular I'm talking about is tamoxifen. It's also known as the Red Devil, for all the horrible side effects that you'll go through while you're being infused with it. But that was the one in particular that was derived from the World War I mustard gas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I haven't gone down that particular rabbit hole at all. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's the first time I'm learning this. Learn something every day.
Well, I lost my mother a couple of years ago to cancer therapy,
Oh,
and finally toward the end found some doctors that were actually listening to me, and that they thought the same things. They're like, "Oh yeah, I was at that press conference that you're talking about."
Yeah, dude. I'm sorry to hear that. Like, that's one thing is people, because we trust doctors. We're not I'm not a doctor, and you go to the doctor and you trust their authority, but like people don't realize it's okay to question doctors because
the same people building the Ukraine narrative are the same ones.
You're right.
Dictating all the education as well. They infiltrated academia first. I believe that was like the model from the Tavistock Institute out of the UK.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, Binkley. I think you've talked about this before. That was
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I got into like, I caused a scene in the hospital a few times because I wasn't let in because I wasn't vaccinated, and I was there trying to help. I need to go in my dad to help him, and they never had any problems. And one time they just started asking if we were vaccinated and tried not to let me in. And the doctor knew what was going on, so the doctor came out and escorted me in, to her credit. But it's just like the arbitrary. It's just the way that they applied these rules. It was just so arbitrary. And, they tried
to do that to me too. My mom was in the ICU going downhill fast, and they were trying to not let me or anyone else back there. And I was like, I will burn this motherfucker down.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
And they're like, excuse me. I was like, you heard me. And then like, hold on. And then they come back with the manager 2 minutes later and said, sir, calm down. Let's go upstairs. I was like, sweet.
One of the
That's all I want. I got my clothes. I'm here to stay.
The arbitrary nature of it is almost, it feels so, to people like us that think about it in this way, it feels maddening and absurd, but it's another thing that's like a psychological test of like who will follow it. And then there's the thinning of the people in industries, I'm saying industries, you know, kind of tongue in cheek a little bit, like education and policing and medicine and everything. That's like, when you lose that many people in a field or in military or government or whatever, now it's a groupthink problem. And the people that are left all think even more aligned. Right. It's scarier even for like these kind of like roundabout reasons with it. But
right. It's like the same propaganda strategy too that they use with the whole Ukraine thing. It's like if you question it, just like if you question Ukraine, you're a MAGA Republican or you're evil.
Yeah.
That's absolutely it. And yeah, I know Russell Brand was just on Rogan. He was talking about how the guy Pavlov, that doctor did, you know, the whole Pavlov drooling and all that.
The conditioning thing,
yeah. He did other experiments where he basically found that 20% of the population is extremely susceptible to placebos and hypnotization, and 20% of the population
are like
will
immune.
never ever be hypnotized. And so everybody's fighting over that middle 60%.
Yeah.
And I feel like most libertarians are in that upper 20. Screw you. You'll never tell me what to do.
Oh, I have violent reactions to it. Like I can tell when, well, some, not all by any means, but some of the programming, you know, I can tell, like, I can't see what it is, but I can tell there's another message under this.
Yes. Yeah. Watch
and I instantly, you know, I have to leave the room. I get itchy, start getting all nervous, and I'm like, I can't stand this.
I'd probably drive my girlfriend crazy because there's certain movies that I can watch that it's like it's not as bad, and I'm like down with, and then there's some that I'm like, I can't do this right now.
You start calling out the BS.
Yeah, there's like two things happening simultaneously. Oh my god!
I'll ruin every movie totally.
I ruined so many shows. I ruined so many shows. From
I've retroactively gone back and ruined some of my favorite movies from when I was a kid or something, which is sad, but
it's brutal. Yeah, it's really bad to go back and watch something that was like your favorite thing 10 years ago, and now you're just like, oh my god.
But I think some people don't want to know because of that. You know what I mean? Like I think some people have like a barrier there where like I'm willing to inflict myself that pain of, you know, the nostalgia pain or whatever, but like some people don't want to.
I will absolutely choose if I see like an article about my favorite band doing something political, I will delete that stuff. I won't even look at it because I have no interest.
Music is sacred. I agree. Yeah.
You know what musician that I'm proud of is Right Fred said. He's a big
really.
Yeah, so I was making fun, like I was just riffing off of, you know, I'm too sexy for my
song guy.
Yeah. It's like I'm too sexy. And then somebody, this is a couple of years ago, somebody said he's totally against the whole COVID narrative, and I started following him on Twitter, and he is. He's like against all of the BS, and I'm like, all right, dude. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm too sexy for BS, I think.
That's awesome.
That's pretty great. Mr. Shane Hazel retweeted Grumpy Gnome, who I'm pretty sure is watching this today.
I think he is.
It's an expansion
he's in the chats.
of NATO over the years. I thought very, very nice. Let's see if we can. Can't enlarge it. Sorry, everybody who's watching on their phone. I just thought it was very interesting how it's just slowly over 50, 60, 70 years. Just
you're not suggesting that you know is a cause of this war, are you?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm letting the map do the suggesting for us.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia shouldn't have put their country so close to our defensive alliance.
It is extreme. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they did that. It seemed really stupid of them to do. But I mean, goodness gracious, could it be more obvious that we were absolutely a cause in the
we're a cause in every war and every political strife basically that matters globally. Like that's like what's that guy's name that was just talking on that like fake Rachel Maddow loop thing or whatever about the CIA getting involved in the overthrow of the democracy. Thank you. Yeah. It's every overthrow of everything is the CIA is behind it. Everyone. Yep. Everyone that like matters, you know, globally. But anyway.
I mean,
I mean,
look at all
Edward
this.
Bernays talks about overthrowing the democratically elected president in Guatemala, like in 1953, working with the banana company, United Fruit, and working with the CIA, and that we apologized for decades later. And he's one of the guys that helped implement the propaganda model that has been modernized today. And he also brags in his book about how Hitler used his propaganda model against the Jews.
Do you think
Yeah.
one day
Wow.
we're going to apologize for overthrowing Ukraine in 2014?
Like 30
Here's
years,
a
30,
here's a
40 years.
better question. How many times do we have to have the CIA or any other whatever three-letter organization apologize for something so we learn the trend and predictively avoid it and see it as it's happening before they apologize? Like,
I think they're smart about it. They only apologize once every 30 years.
Yeah.
so like people forget
Yeah,
in
like,
two
yeah.
generations. Like
Oops,
2
we
generations
fixed
go
that.
by.
Yeah. It's like the Tuskegee experiment. This is the propaganda they use on black people for
Yeah.
COVID. Yeah, we know the Tuskegee experiment happened and that was awful, but we're not like that anymore.
but that's not this now. Yeah.
Well, what
right,
about the
exactly.
Guatemala experiment where you actually injected like syphilis into children's eyeballs? That's like the worst one.
Ew, was it the eyeball?
Yes,
It
and it
was.
was Secretary of State Hillary Clinton that did the apology for that. I watched that broadcast.
Wow.
Goodness gracious! But she's somehow still in
so-
politics.
Right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
might-
I mean,
she might
just
still
came
be-
straight out and was talking about under
Wow.
her husband's administration. We sent syphilis infected. It was the Hep B vaccines, and they were infected with syphilis, and like we sent those to Central and South America
And
in
then
the early '90s.
Mother.
right before COVID, basically, there was like more and more. I feel like there was like the most people in a while that were like, oh, fuck Pfizer and all these, different Bayer and Merck and whatever. Like, and there was like what is it? The biggest, I think it's the biggest payout for a lawsuit like in world history was over vaccines that were a bad batch or something. And they knew it and they gave it to, I don't know, some country in like Africa or something like that. And like there was the same types of people. This is like preying on
Wasn't it
the
polio?
humanitarian
Wasn't
thing.
it Bill Gates? Weren't they given?
There was multiple over the
Yeah.
years, and that
Yeah,
was
there
another
was
one.
the whole Bill Gates getting run out of India.
Yeah,
And Uganda.
kids started getting
Yeah.
polio because they were injected
because
with
of
the
the
polio vaccine.
vaccines. That was another one, but it was. I mean, they're all the same. That's my point. Is that like, and now those same people that were like mad at him for that are like, I think, defending
Yeah,
them
they
all of
really,
a
they
sudden.
really
Like,
like Bill Gates now.
it's crazy.
Yeah, somehow Bill Gates became their hero. I mean, it's
I don't get that at
freaking
all.
bizarre. Although,
I have.
didn't
a
he
friend
just
that's-
didn't he just start talking about how the vaccine isn't working anymore? And
Yeah, he's
He-
made
yeah.
comments on that.
right? And
What
everyone
the
that said that
heck?
before it happened was blocked and banned and everything. Whatever, but.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
see, there's so much information they pump into our heads that it's hard to retain everything. And I think that because of kind of the information age, that they can make us forget about things a lot quicker than they used to be able to.
That's like the new tactic is just to cloud the water
Yeah.
with just too
Yeah.
much information.
I came up with a little theory today that that the invention of the internet is the modern day Tower of Babel.
Yeah,
Where-
it honestly.
Where basically nobody speaks the same language because you can't tell if somebody's sarcastic, if they're being humorous,
Right.
if they're actually being serious.
That's
Yeah.
a
You
great.
don't know if
comparison.
anything is actually real. You're just it's just a deluge of information, and you have no idea how to interpret it properly. And there's too much for you to interpret properly.
Mhm.
So I played these videos maybe 2-3 weeks ago. From I found this story about this e-girl who was promoting joining the military, and she would talk about how she was a psyop the whole time, and she'd be like, "I'm a psyop," and she would wear
Oh,
military.
I know what
fatigues.
I think I know which one you're
And-
talking
and she
about.
would be sitting on, out there with a weapon, just blowing shit up, and then you look her up, and she's actually in the Army's psychological operation unit. So she's actually a psyop, and she's joking about being a psyop, and they're talking about how it's like a post-ironic psyop
Yeah.
type thing, kind of, where it's like the same thing you're saying, where you can't tell what's supposed to be humor and
We were
what's
kind of
serious.
just talking about that.
Yeah.
That like the new way, instead of like, I feel like back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, everyone was just like deny, like cannot confirm or deny, and then now it's like they say what they're gonna do. It's just it'll switch targets or something.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Well, that was because she's like trying to recruit gamers into the military, and I'm like, there's going to be a bunch of gamers
I think
show
this
up
is
to the military.
one
on
you're
day
talking
one-
about. I'm dropping the.
Are we gonna have VR wars?
Probably. I don't think they.
Well,
can
I think
use
we are right now on the border of Russia and Ukraine. A lot of these tanks that are getting blown up, don't have people in them.
Oh
Really?
well, that's another whole thing of like unmanned, but I even mean
Is
like
it this chick?
But
Yes, that's her.
wow,
And she's on TikTok, right? She's doing these things on TikTok, and at the same time, she's saying TikTok is Chinese propaganda. Go to my Instagram. That's her.
which is American propaganda.
Yeah, I know. It's like let us control your information instead of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty
Wow.
effective propaganda, I'd say. Like,
I would
especially
too.
to draw some men in.
Like, there's gonna get there, and these kids, and here's how it's gonna work. They're gonna show up on day one. They're gonna say, "Where are all the hot e-girls that I was coming to hang out with?" And they're gonna be like incels, and they're gonna be like, "Here's your gun, angry incel," and now they'll go be ready to fucking blow people's heads off.
Hey, that. I mean, there are worse ways to die, I guess. Goodness gracious. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And it's I mean, it's a genius move. I mean, advertising
Oh,
companies
yeah.
been doing it for
Totally.
years. I mean, spy agencies do it. It's called the honeypot, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Spy
Yeah,
agencies.
sexpionage.
Exactly.
Yeah,
How much
the fact that she is like legitimately in the special
I know.
like psychological
That's
operations
much
unit.
better.
Well, and didn't the CIA build a memetics department
Yes,
as
they
an
did.
offshoot of that?
They have a
Because they
whole-
were trying to respond to Kekistan, because Kekistan was, at least I can't prove this,
That was
but I feel like it was a big
hilarious.
part of Trump getting elected. Just all the memes that they were throwing around 2014, 2015.
Those were the days. That was hilarious when that was going on.
You know what I found out about the CIA, and they do have a whole memetic study that they're doing. They have there's memetic warfare that they talk about now. But I saw this thing pop up on Twitter on the CIA, and I clicked on it. It was about their new digital jobs or something, and I was like, what are they trying to hire people for? And then it had all their disqualifiers, like here's what we won't hire you if you do any of these things. And
Oh,
one of
I
them
wouldn't
was
be.
if you follow us on Twitter or if you've ever engaged with us on Twitter, we
That's
won't hire you.
hilarious. That's so funny.
What?
I know, that's what I said.
Oh,
That is bizarre.
Probably because their Twitter's stupid, and they're probably like, anybody who does this is too stupid.
it's an IQ test. Yeah.
That is hilarious.
But since that department came out, I've kind of had this theory that, you ever see these memes that like they're kind of liberty minded, but there's just obvious horrible grammar errors, or like there's something slightly wrong with the image.
Yeah,
I'm like, maybe they made that one, and there's some kind of steganographic code in there that's, they can see who all shares it.
Say steganographic?
Yeah.
Yeah, steganography. So like they can hide a whole message, a whole line of code or whatever behind the image.
You wave a black light over it, and it's like, kill this person.
God,
But you can do that with digital images though, where there's embedded code inside the image.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like subliminal advertising or something like in the modern age. Like,
Yeah.
How much? What are y'all's guesses on the total amount of financial aid that we've sent to Ukraine since the beginning of the war?
I have a
Every
couple
time-
of guesses.
Okay.
I saw
Brad,
46 billion. I was reading some articles today. I saw 46 billion thrown around. So
All right.
it's at least 3 times that.
Brad, what's your
the
thought?
US.
I've been trying to figure this out because, strangely, it's a hard number to pinpoint, which you would think that they would have some accounting on this so that we know where everything's going, right? Because they tell us they know where everything's going.
Yep.
I saw 2 videos within the past week. One of them was from the Chatham House, and this was they were both talking about this is the 1-year anniversary of the war, and the guy at the Chatham House said, we sent 140 billion, 70s come from America, which I thought seemed way too low, but that was the first time I had heard an actual number. So he said 70 from America, 140 total. Then during the interview between Biden and David Muir, which Biden didn't dispute this, David Muir says, we've sent 119 billion to Ukraine. And I assumed that he was talking about just us, the way that he said it. So I'm going to say at least 119 billion.
Okay. Well, your first one was a little closer to what I found, which is 76.8 billion. That's just the U.S. And obviously, there's no way that number is correct because they never report anything 100%. So
Right.
it's at least $76.8 billion. And
Well, that's nothing.
yeah.
and
Chump change.
should we pull up how much was sent to East Palestine?
Yes, let's see.
Oh.
All right, like
Let's
jug
see.
of water.
Let's see. Oh, it'd be 0. No, we don't have.
Yeah, there we
we
go.
don't have any numbers for that. It's
Is
nothing.
that, didn't they not even count that as far as an emergency yet, or FEMA, blah, blah, blah? Not that they're that helpful,
Well, yeah.
but like,
They said since no homes were destroyed or damaged, it wasn't.
that
a
it's not even
disaster.
qualified as
Yeah.
a disaster. Yeah.
It's freaking ridiculous.
Which, by the way, have y'all ever been in or near a FEMA disaster? You know, like a tornado comes through or a hurricane or something like that.
Yeah.
Why is the first thing that totally goes to crap the post office? Seriously, like once they come to town, all the mail is delayed like at least 2 weeks.
I think they're always teetering on disaster anyway.
Yes,
over there.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Andrew Jesse Ryan says around 115 billion or more. Yep.
It's
I
just
agree with
crazy. They can't give us an exact number. There's so many conflicting numbers on that.
Well,
They'll
I mean, how many
say-
times do they have to lose $2 trillion in the accounting for us to, like? I mean, they've
Again,
done it
you
like
don't-
3 times now.
Thank you,
They'll say
Rumsfeld.
You don't know what the CIA is selling drugs
say
in the
Rumsfeld?
inner
That's what I was
cities to fund weapons purchases. But yeah, you know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Nick. I was just excited that I was going to make the same reference about like the 1.2 trillion missing or whatever, and then like, oops, it blew up. I don't know. We will never know.
Well, and, you know, and if you want to get skeptical about the chemical companies, and you know, Barry Goldwater warned us about the interlocking corporate directorships. You know, so you got I forget exactly how the Agent Orange came into effect, but you know, Clarence Thomas, who's supposedly our conservative hero on the bench at the Supreme Court, cut his teeth in law as a prosecutor for Monsanto.
Wow.
So obviously, anything concerning Monsanto is going to have a soft opinion from him. And you got Donald Rumsfeld. You know, he was Secretary of State under Bush.
Mm-hmm.
He was the prosecutor for this, was it Searle Chemical Company? And he's responsible for aspartame being generally recognized as safe by the FDA.
Wow.
Even though they were talking in court about how it like metabolizes into wood alcohol and make you go blind.
Yeah, or like formaldehyde or wood alcohol or something in the gut. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to find somebody that does not have some sort of connection like that in a position of power. It's almost like they're compromised.
Almost. Yeah, it's almost.
Almost.
But you might be onto something.
Well, I think it's the fact that like positions of power only attract narcissists, and narcissists only care about themselves. So they're going to do whatever they can to like benefit themselves at the expense of anybody else. It doesn't freaking matter.
And that's you're exactly right about that. And that makes me think about this guy George Santos, you know, the guy.
Yeah.
So people are talking about him, but I'm like, he's just not as good at it as all the other ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
He created idiotic lies that people could figure out in 1 second.
Right. It's the others are just
You
just
got to be
doing
like,
it.
yeah. You've got to be like all these other congressmen who are just making millions of dollars off of their $200,000 a year salary, but a term in Congress, and you go from broke to multiple millions AOC.
Right.
2 terms.
Totally,
It only happens in the second terms. It's between years 5 and 6.
And AOC spends half of her time on Instagram clipping her toenails and doing like ASMR videos, eating popcorn, talking to her followers. I mean, believe me, I'm a huge fan, but I just don't think that's what somebody should do.
She does love that weird like kitchen angle with her like knee up in her chest
Yes,
and just
exactly,
like eating ice cream. She's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Acting like she's one of the people.
Well, it's better than Elizabeth Warren having a beer.
Yes, hers are ridiculous with her
Trying to learn some slang words.
Wait, when was this?
Oh, she was doing that. This was 2015 was a weird year, man.
When she was running for president, she was.
Oh, that was
doing some
2020.
It was when it was coming out that she was like 0.0001% Indian.
I'm having a beer with my husband.
It was doing all that. She was trying to relate back to her base, and she was having a beer on a live stream.
I'm more native than she is, honestly. I don't look at it all.
It's
but
racist, dude. You're racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I'm like, it's my own ancestry. Why can't I say something about it? But like, I've never done a percentage thing, but I'm way more than that. Like, I don't look like it, but so I'm not claiming this like to go to college or whatever because like I didn't.
You could.
Well, Robert's onto something too. You know, all politics are local. That's how we were originally framed.
Yep.
And that skeleton is still intact. You know, as much corruption as there is, we can get together and make fun of it all day. It's horrible. It's way out of control. But the framework is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of these influential meetings, you know, your local zoning office, you know, the local tax assessors talking about the millage rate, any of that stuff that really directly affects you and your paycheck and your ability to survive are so underattended or even unattended that all this stuff just gets rammed through by just by default. Because there's no one to say no.
That's because, I mean, there are many reasons for this, but one of the reasons is because your back to the internet and back to like 24-hour news cycle, you're bombarded with fear mongers for 24 hours a day about things way outside of your control that they make you think you can control by getting active. And so you worry about these statewide or like regional or like national, international problems when you should be worrying. You should be worrying about the stuff in your community that you can control to make your life and the people around you have a better life.
And they co-op the
This is
local
why
news
Jake and Steve
too.
are running for mayor.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, it's just infuriating because you're absolutely right. Like the structure's still there. You can make a massive impact on your local level. That's why I loved running around with Shane, because like he would actually do stuff at the local level, get stuff done, and make change, and it was fantastic.
You look at the AJC, you look at these other places, they echo the same thing as CNN, MSNBC, and then you look and you see how they're bought up by the Google News Initiative, a global initiative to eliminate mis and disinformation. And then you understand like why they want to capture the most local level, which makes it hard. Even when you're the newspaper that gets thrown in your driveway is telling you the same stuff that you see at the national level. It directs people away from all the things that they can actually have an impact on.
What is it, like 5 or 6 companies that own all of media now at this point? It's a really small number, but it's all the same stuff. Yeah,
but it's the same with the food you eat too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you got like what Unilever, Cargill,
P&G,
Nestle, Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
You know, all of them. That commands 3/4 of all the groceries in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And skincare and all that.
Is there something wrong with the groceries?
Well, you know, they're either getting more expensive or I'm getting a lot stronger. And I was just like I carried $400 of groceries in one arm.
It's so expensive.
It's a good way to look at it.
That is a great way to look at that, and a sad way.
Robert is absolutely correct. Polk County, Georgia, is corruption personified. It is an unfortunate example of how local politics can be extremely oppressive and terrible to people.
It can go either way with it. Yeah.
Is that Marjorie Greene's district?
Is it?
I don't know.
I think it is. Yeah.
Might be on the northern end of it. That's right up there by Rome and everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was Floyd, or not Floyd.
What's his name that you had on the podcast, Jake, is up there, and he tried to take his story to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's right. Yeah, he did.
A bunch of the local Republicans or whatever got together and said, and a bunch of the local Republicans got together and said, oh, no, you don't have to worry about that. Nothing wrong there. And then she was like, this guy's full of it, and just kind of blew him off.
MTG is ours. Yes.
Magic the Gathering.
If I remember that whole story right.
Exactly. We tried to replace her with Angela. Okay.
We did.
You know, Angela needed a whole lot more signatures, which is, I'm not sure that many people actually live there.
She needed what, 23,000 signatures? Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So the person I told y'all about earlier on Twitter that was tweeting the stuff about the 100 Nazis that they were okay with.
Yeah.
They just kind of stopped because I kept saying, so when I said that, you're okay with 100 Nazis, they said, I'm done with this. I have to worry about the Nazi where I live, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I was just like, but even if she were, she's just one, though. Don't you need 99 more there before you start to worry about that?
Yeah. People like to have zero argument for what they believe in anymore.
That's what they train them in with. So I could tell this person has been going to Indivisible online trainings, the activist group. They have a whole bunch of different ones because I've gone to a bunch of them myself because I dissect them in videos. And I'm like, look, I know that your Indivisible trainer is telling you this, but it's just straight up brainwashing techniques that they use. Like there was one that comes to mind where they actually told, this was back during the George Floyd protest, where they said in their online training, they said, look, if anybody comes to you and says that Martin Luther King preached peace and that you shouldn't judge people by the color of their skin, they are a racist, white nationalist trying to gaslight you. That's what they train these people to believe. So anybody who actually tells you what he really says is a gaslighting racist. It's unbelievable.
Goodness gracious.
Do they tell you who's responsible for his assassination and all of that side.
No, they don't go into any of
Yeah.
that.
No.
Well, I'm lucky enough to live right next to the town where some of MLK's descendants live.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not. So Coretta Scott King she's up near Atlanta. This is Bernice, lives in Peachtree City. We used to go trick or treating at her house because she gave out the full size, king size Snickers.
Of course, it's king size. Nice.
Interesting.
I was going to mention, so the comment or the topic prior about the really on the nose style of like propaganda lately, and the muddying the waters and everything. The first I ever heard of Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I'm not over there right now, so was like when she was blasting out like 100 different like conspiracy theory type things, and it was like one of those ones where again I think it's trying to muddy the water because it'll be like 4 nonsensical crazy things or whatever, and then one truth, and then 4 crazy things, and then one truth, and then you know what I mean, like to discredit the ones. And so now I'm the person that's been saying this for 20 years or whatever. And then now I look like I'm, a sympathizer with someone like her because it's been sandwiched with bullshit.
Totally.
But,
I mean, that's a tactic that they use. Absolutely.
Yeah, but with her, the one they always go to is Jewish space lasers. But apparently she was just off about who was the actual provider of the space lasers.
Right, yeah.
Answer was China.
I mean, it's not any worse than Don Lemon suggesting a black hole swallowed an airplane. Like, freaking idiot.
What?
Did you not ever hear that clip?
Yeah.
He suggested, he's like, is it possible that a black hole swallowed this airplane that disappeared from the sky? And the scientist is like, what are you talking about?
That's
I think it's very possible Stacey Abrams swallowed the airplane.
There we go.
Good one, Brad.
Right in the teeth.
It's a really discriminating black hole, yeah.
Got an article from antiwar.com. House overwhelmingly approves resolution to maintain Syria sanctions after the earthquake. So we're continuing sanctions against Syria, even after we're no longer at war with them. We're not supposed to have any troops there. We still
we're still occupying a third of the country.
Yeah. But even though they had these massive earthquakes and their people were already struggling and are struggling even worse now, we continue the sanctions. So once again, proving that sanctions only hurt people and don't hurt governments. It's absurd.
And we're going to see more of these types of events, and not for the same reasons that, like, I'm not saying it's because of gas cars or whatever, but I do think we're going to be seeing more of these types of events, and it's going to be the perfect excuse to do more sanctions and more things like that. And
yeah, that's true.
That's wild. That article, though, that's wild that only Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, only 2 people who voted against it, 414 to 2.
To 2.
Wow.
To 2.
So as much as people hate Marjorie Taylor Greene, stuff like this puts her.
She does a whole bunch of the right things.
She does.
Yeah.
She does.
But again, Sam.
But I'm not fooled. Like, there's going to be a switch eventually.
Yeah.
No, but
there's
been rants she's put out that are like as anti-war as like something that you'd hear out of anyone on our side's mouth. But then there's always something crazy or something wild or, redefining national divorce to mean blue states and red states break up. And we're just like, no, that's not what we're.
She's like the human equivalent of like, if you keep just pressing the button on your iPhone to like just auto say things, and she just says everything.
That's
so
good.
It's gonna be like
that's pretty good.
She's like the broken clock where she's right sometimes, twice a day or whatever, but she says a lot of shit. So I don't know.
You're on to it a moment ago. It's you get somebody who they can easily brand as crazy to say things that are true certain times.
They sneak in some things where you're like, oh wait, she said like there wasn't an actual plane that hit the Pentagon in 9/11 or whatever.
But you can't agree with her because then people are like, I don't take anything you say seriously anymore.
Yeah.
I knew there was something screwed up about her when I saw her twice in the same week on Alex Jones.
Twice in the same week. Wow.
Oh yeah.
He had her back quick.
Yeah.
Dang.
And then she came on a couple of weeks later. It was like,
okay.
He was trying to make it. She was talking about during the election season, during the downtime. She's like, if I don't get reelected, I might start a podcast of my own.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
please.
I'm waiting for her to present legislation to mandate CrossFit after that video she put up the other day.
Did y'all see who was it that that proposed legislation to ban all parties that ever supported slavery. Did y'all see this?
No, I didn't see that.
And it was Democrats who are trying to push this bill, and it was the Democratic Party
I was gonna say,
that was supported slavery.
are we counting like with this whole switch thing over time or whatever? Because
Well,
I
over
think that
time,
was-
like the parties changed, but it was still the Democratic Party that was the proponent
That's
of
what-
slavery.
yeah.
It's freaking insane. And so Tim Pool was talking about this too. He was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Fine, let's
Right.
push
Yeah.
that
It's
bill
like
through.
that.
Let's do
Yes,
it."
It's
do it.
perfect. Snake eat its tail, like whatever. Oh man.
There's also a much smaller vote today up in Montana. Nick and myself were trying to get some attention to it. Defend the Guard. We were trying to pass Defend the Guard Act up there, and it failed 40-60.
What's that about?
So basically, it says
Oh.
that the federal government cannot send Montana National Guard or any troops from Montana abroad unless a formal war is declared.
Oh,
And so it's because we haven't declared a formal war since World War II, and so all these
Right,
wars that we fought have
Right.
been like
That law's not already on the books.
What?
No, it's-
Like that doesn't the governor have a say of where their defense force goes?
no,
You're right. It's,
not.
well,
that's weird. Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
so kind of, but like it's not being enforced. So like this
Yes.
Defend the Guard is to say, hey, no, you need to declare war before you go sending, National Guard from this state over to Ukraine or anything like that. So, I feel like it's a matter of time before this bill gets passed. It's being introduced all over the place. Montana's been the best bet because it got voted out of committee. And honestly, a 40-60 is not a terrible end to it.
It's not terrible.
That's,
Still not great, and it's completely illogical that it doesn't get more votes. Like, I don't understand. Like, what goes
well,
through?
here's the thing:
somebody's
is that
head?
part of it is like you hear the guys who are pushing it. What Pat McGeehan and the other guys who were on it when they're telling the stories when they introduced it in West Virginia and started pushing it. Like the Pentagon came down hard on the state legislators and were like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to fuck you over this way and this and that. And like, you're not going to get this. You're not going to get that. We're pulling this. We're pulling that. If you go through it now, the first state that gets it passed, I think there's going to be a domino effect and other states are going to go with it because.
Well, here in Georgia, we have a Georgia Defense Force, which is a volunteer, kind of like an Army Reserves kind of thing. It's like the National Guard, but it's strictly under the purview of the governor. And I know there were other state agencies, at one time that were viewing these folks as, an insurrectionist organization kind of thing, because they were swearing to the Georgia Constitution and not the U.S. Constitution, and.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a little going over the top kind of stuff. But Clark Howard, I don't know if you know who that guy is, but he's a consumer advocate. He was a big guy for the Georgia Defense Force. He just recently retired from it. And that's so down here we have if the mainland is ever invaded, Georgia has the governor has his own army.
How
like
long
that.
do you think before Brian Kemp announces he's going to run for president?
Oh God, he is going to do that. Isn't
He's
he?
absolutely going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, after
Yeah.
defeating Abrams by what 10 points?
Well, yeah, and he's propped up by the mainstream media because he didn't do it on the back of Trump. So-
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
He
stood up to
rebuffed
Trump.
Trump.
He-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, he's the reasonable guy in the room.
So
Yeah,
you think he's going to run in this coming cycle?
I think that he probably will. Yeah.
Interesting. That would. So how does it work in Georgia? So who would take over as governor?
I think you just give it to Stacey. I think
You
you
just.
it's rightfully hers anyway.
Oh yeah, no, she
Yeah,
claims
yeah.
it is,
I don't
for
know.
sure.
That's a good question.
I don't know
No.
if we see
The
see
lieutenant governor would
Congress
step
step
up,
up
right?
to primary
think
Biden.
so.
Does Abrams get in on that race?
Say that again.
If what?
If we get some people stepping up to primary Biden on the Democratic ticket, you think Abrams is in on that?
That's her ultimate goal as
I
president.
feel like she's not going to be the first one to announce on that, but I feel like if other people were jumping in on her primary,
Do you
People
guys
love
even
her,
think?
and she is a victim. So,
So
Yes.
what was she doing involved in Nigeria's elections recently?
what?
Like this week,
She was over there.
Stacey Abrams.
She was vote harvesting. She was signing people up for the Democrat Party over there.
she was counting in mail-in ballots over there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm saying. No, I mean, seriously, she was involved in the Nigerian election somehow.
Right. They do these. They have these international vote counters over there, and there's this guy named Mark Malik. His name is actually Malik. I think Mark Malik Brown, and he is now the president of the Open Society Foundation. He's been like best buddies with George Soros for decades. And I played some clips of this guy at Davos where he was actually talking about all the work they do in the state of Georgia and in Africa. And basically what he's been doing for the past 40 years is going to other countries and rigging elections. And he's a controversial guy. And mind you, George Soros and the Open Society Foundation is what started Stacey Abrams in Georgia. I mean, she's gotten more money from them than anybody else. I've looked into it a little bit. I haven't dove deep into it, but I'm certain it has to do with the Open Society Foundation, her being over there.
Interesting. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to your research on it, man, because that's no one dives into it like you.
I appreciate that.
I agree. Yeah, listening to you talk about Stacey Abrams and some other folks here in Georgia is great. Yeah, if y'all don't watch Propaganda Report or anything Brad Binkley does, you should go check him out because all his stuff is awesome and he does his daggum research.
I just got turned on to it from you being on here, and I don't know how it got by me before. I love it. I listened to like 6 or 7 episodes just today, like been
I
binging
appreciate that. Yeah.
It's like if Michael Savage were not an angry Republican and a whole lot younger.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Right.
Well, y'all, this week was a pretty historic week. It's an anniversary of sorts. Terrible anniversary. Waco.
Right. Yeah.
Beginning of Waco.
Yeah, the beginning of Waco, not the murder part. The beginning part where they keep them in prison for a long time.
Guys, they got democracy. They just needed some freedom and democracy.
Yeah.
And the U.S. government gave it to them.
What
anniversary is it? It's
the beginning. It's the very beginning of Waco, of the siege.
Was it how many years ago?
30.
30 years ago?
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of young people have no idea about this.
Let's see. Yeah, no, a lot of young people would definitely have no idea what Waco was, for sure.
The 90s were awesome.
Oh yeah, they were awesome.
Golly.
There's a whatchamacallit,
Dude,
memorial.
ATF got ratioed the hell out of, like,
I bet.
LP National ratioed the hell out of them.
Yes. Yeah, they're guarding the monument to agents that died in that siege, even though let's go back to the other page and see how many innocent civilians they murdered. 87 innocent people died.
But it's not 100.
It's not 100 Nazis. It's 87 innocent people. So
just 25 were children.
25 of them were children. If any of y'all have watched Waco, the limited series?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It was actually done pretty good.
Dude, it was done really well. I watched it all in one night. It was the most. I mean, I couldn't go to sleep after that. It was depressed. It's so freaking just
like, I'm surprising that they actually like gave a reasonable portrayal of the thing.
Yeah, it was very reasonable.
Not the propagandistic, they were insane and they burned themselves alive take.
Yep.
I'll actually watch it now, because if you're saying that, because that's the thing that usually like steers me away from a lot of these types of things is the angle on it. And it's like
they were even pushing the ATF shot first by shooting at the dogs storyline.
Yep.
Oh yeah, they gave it a fair shake. I mean, they definitely did a Hollywood job of making the guy look really creepy.
Yes.
But we all know, people like that are extremely charismatic. And they made him look like a creepy recluse kind of guy. And I'm not sure that's
Koresh
the truth.
was not a good guy either,
Yeah.
He was,
I'm not saying he's totally innocent. Pretty weird what was going on there, but not worth burning everybody alive.
We've had like
and that's where the propaganda is able to like convince people one side or another. Is like people can't accept that there's gray areas in that. Like you can be against what happened there and also be like, yeah, there was some weird stuff going on, but what happened was wrong.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the like resurgent obsession with like serial killers recently and them being like played by like hot Hollywood actors and things?
Dude, are you talking about the show You? Is that one? You're
There's
thinking about?
several, but
So
yeah,
there's this show You. I watched a couple episodes of it. Actually, I watched more than that. I watched a season of it, and they have this guy who's a serial killer, and he like narrates the whole thing,
mhm.
and he's super woke. So like he's like, oh wow, I can't believe she was able to say that racist thing. What a race! I'm like, what is this? Why is the serial killer woke? And it's just weird.
Is
Well,
it
The only way to get to actually like make people continue to watch a show about a serial killer over repeated seasons is to have an internal monologue that agrees with what your audience is thinking.
Right. Yeah.
They did that with Dexter. That's
That
the
was
only
just-
reason that show was good.
I was gonna, if you weren't already thinking that, yeah.
Yeah, because he was like he was relatable and like he was
his-
actually going after like terrible people who murdered people. Whereas I'm not sure what the storyline is in You, but him being woke just shows you exactly who their audience is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know what else is funny is like, am I crazy or like did the term woke like totally change from a while ago and like it started to be used for like more like people like us, like that were like woke to the bullshit of what's going on, and then it got like totally hijacked.
I think so.
I was
I
gonna
think it did
'cause
flip a little.
I remember there was like a small window where that terms was starting to be used in like circles like this.
It was a good
and then
term.
it got yeah, right. Well, by our standard, like yeah, and then it got completely just redirected or whatever.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask how you.
Certain
if you
words
guys
have a way
remembered
of doing that.
Yeah, right. Someone does. Yeah.
They flip terms, man. I mean, they actually literally change words in the dictionary now.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
they
like
have
vaccine
definition.
now.
Regular.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like Red Pill started out as exactly what it was from the Matrix, like showing you the truth. And now
We
so
talked
many
about this.
people are misusing it to mean like turned Republican.
Yeah.
Turned like
Yeah.
blue
Which
pill
is-
turned Democrat, red pill turned Republican. And
Which
it's
is sad because it misses the whole point of like
Watch
seeing
the
the
movie.
bigger picture. Like yeah,
Which sucks that that's one of the two colors chosen because of that. But
yeah.
you know, it's
just go watch the movie. Like then you'll know the definition. It's that simple. And it's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Absolutely
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Do you like the second and third one?
No.
As movies know, like
fourth
as,
one actually too. Yeah.
Oh, the Animatrix or
no, the
the one with Neil
animatrix is
Patrick
pretty
Harris.
cool. Actually,
Neil Patrick.
I like the.
Oh, is that the fourth one?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's in that one briefly. Or no, he's in that one actually. You're right. I forgot.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was the reboot. What last year, 2 years
Yeah.
ago?
it was like a
Yeah.
year or two ago, I think.
That movie was so bad. I
was
thought it
bad.
was intentionally bad. Do you know what I mean? Like that movie.
I did too. I like
That
Keanu
movie-
Reeves too, so I was just
Sure, yeah, but that movie
Robert's
was
killing
on
it tonight.
Another level.
Robert's hitting everything perfect.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
what is it? NLP, neuro linguistic programming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
again, that was the stuff I was talking about earlier. That when that's in there, I sense it, and I have to leave the room.
Yeah, if you combine the neuro-linguistic programming, whatever, with the CIA's like Hollywood pre-programming, and now you've got this like sexy programming baby that like is a nightmare. Man,
Are
it's
there
hard.
any good movies out there that are either intentionally or unintentionally libertarian or promoting individual freedoms and stuff?
Oddly enough, there's an animated movie on Netflix. It's family friendly. Sea Beast.
Sea Beast.
Yeah, yeah. The NAP is hard in that one.
I'm going to
Check that
look
out.
that up.
It's so hard to find a good movie these days. So
It
check
is,
that
yeah.
out.
It
There's
really
not
is.
much worthwhile
I
watching.
mean, I obviously I loved Velma, but other than that, I can't really find anything good to watch.
Velma.
Is that the
Is this it?
Scooby Doo?
Steve?
Yeah, that's it.
The Scooby Doo with no Scooby Doo.
Yeah, non-negotiation principle is the central theme of that movie.
Wow. Okay. Well, I got to check that one out.
Check that out. Sea Beast.
We did talk about a show that's pretty libertarian, which is Clarkson's Farm. It's a documentary show about Jeremy Clarkson starting a farm. We talked about that a little bit last week. Freaking awesome. It just makes you hate British government, which is like the basis for everything good, I think. Yeah. So that's another.
Yeah, I
good
saw
one.
a funny post today. Someone posted it out there in one of the chats I'm in, but it was a guy who got fined for having a bag with some chip bags thrown in it in his van, and he got fined for not having a license to transport rubbish.
What?
What? Where
Yes.
is this?
Excuse me?
Yes,
What?
that whole needing a license for everything over there is
Oh.
legitimate. I mean,
Oh,
you
in
need
the
licenses
UK,
for
yeah.
TVs. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw one recently where somebody was pulled over and it was like the stuffing of a stuffed animal. It was some kind of like sandbag, but
Yeah.
it was mistaken for cocaine.
Right.
And she spent 2 days in jail until they were like, "Oh, this is just sand."
Somebody started snorting it in the police station. They're like, "This isn't coke. What are you doing?"
Let him off. Let him off. I almost got in trouble one time because someone was drinking a McDonald's coffee in the backseat of my car, and I got pulled over, and they spilled the sugar packet all over, and they were like, shining. It was night, and they were shining the light all over it and everything, and they made me step out of the car, and I was like, "It's sugar!" Like,
Yeah. That's crazy.
here, watch
thing.
me snort it and show you.
Yeah.
Knowing you, Alden, they were definitely doing cocaine in the backseat.
Oh my god.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not saying that's never happened. I'm just saying that night.
that particular time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Remember says supposedly Britain wanted to remove all domestic felines due to COVID.
Okay, so the animal stuff with the COVID thing, I don't know about Britain, but like we've had stuff here where they were like talking about vaccinating every chicken and weird stuff, and I'm like, whoa, like what are we doing with the?
Well, they got to get
There
the
was-
vaccine into you somehow, and you're going to eat the chicken.
That
so-
was the thing. Bill Gates has a quote about it. I'm so bad with quotes, but the concept is like if we put some vaccines like in the food supply, we don't have to worry basically about like the avoidance to the vaccine or whatever. Like,
Well, that's terrifying.
I
So
know.
that was
I gotta get my own chicken.
he's trying to develop a vaccine to reduce methane emissions in cow farts. So there's
What?
going to be
Is that
there's
a
going to be a
thing?
bovine vaccine that it will reduce their methane emissions supposedly. Like he's actually studying this, and that was what that quote comes from was
Wow.
during that whole study.
Goodness.
And
Every
then
time
so
I-
it's a company that built that the Gates Foundation owns, and that's what they're
doesn't he own? But
they're
yeah.
hopeful it's going to go to market in the next 5 years.
It was still like a
Wow.
contagious vaccine too that you can like put under people's tongues and
Now
and-
that is what scares me a lot, like the concept of that.
I
Stephen
mean,
always,
it's just a bioweapon. Like that's all
Yeah.
it is.
yeah, it is.
It's literally
It's
just
just
COVID.
a virus. Yeah, that's just a
Yeah, that's
virus
right.
you made.
Yeah.
Stephen always like I'll bring up something and I'll be like, I don't know who said it, I don't know what year, I don't know when, I don't know the full quote, and then Stephen's like, I know exactly where that's from. Like, so thank you, Set and Spike. Like,
We had talking about another vote. We had a vote today in the Georgia Senate. Voted down a bill to create Buckhead City. 23 people voted for. It got close to.
what's Buckhead City? What is this?
So within Atlanta is an area called Buckhead.
Okay.
And it's the really nice part of town that was being overrun by crime over the past 3 years because cops
The mostly
were,
peaceful
It-
riots.
It's where a lot of the taxpayer money came from because a lot of wealthy
Yes.
people live out there.
and
Oh.
so they wanted to secede from Atlanta and become its own city, so that they don't have to, so their taxes don't go to Atlanta anymore.
Oh
So they
wow.
have their own police force, and they
Well,
run
I can
all
I can
the
tell you
crap out
why
of it.
this iteration of this movement it's good that it's failed because their plans right now, from what I understand, Fulton County has about 200 patrol cars or patrol units
Yeah.
assigned to that area during an active shift. They were going to deploy their own department and immediately have 6 to 1,200 on the streets at all times.
Wow.
So we're talking
man.
small army. They were going to buy 2 MRAPs from Clayton County.
You got to read
Yeah.
the fine print. That's crazy.
So there's something interesting going on with this, which I don't know a ton about yet, but there was a lot of talk on social media where if it goes through and Buckhead is gone, then they would not have the funding to continue to build the police training
Cop City.
facility, Cop City as they call it. And there's been a lot of protests going on at this outside in this forest where they're going to build Cop City. And there was a guy who he fired at police first, from my understanding of the story, and they ended up killing him. And because there's been a bunch of protesters, most of them not even from the state of Georgia, who are protesting in the forest out there. Climate change. They don't have any demands, but they're just out there protesting the climate change stuff. Well, they have a week of action coming
Protesting
up.
what then?
They're protesting the building of this Cop City training facility.
Oh,
It takes down a bunch of trees, basically.
Yes,
It's-
it's going to take out
they
the
have a
forest.
homeless camp there.
Very
in
generic
the trees.
climate change reasons is their reasoning. Really, I don't know what the Cop City is going to be, but I know that the standard protester thing where they basically con a bunch of young people whose parents have a lot of money and get them to go out and do a bunch of protesting because they don't have anything better to do. One of them ends up getting killed. And they have a week of action coming up starting tomorrow, actually. And they're going to be out in the woods. They're building these encampments, and they're telling people you can come out. If you get arrested, we'll bail you out. There's probably going to be something
Wow.
that happens within the next week
100%.
regarding this whole story.
Oh yeah, no, because what they do is they build all these different like tree houses and bunkers, and they put up traps and stuff in this forest. And so
Traps.
when the cops come through, they have to like avoid all these booby traps and try to get
What?
these people out of there. And like it's pretty
super
insane.
sketchy.
Wow.
I've surveyed some of these areas, just not even being a cop, and it sucks
I bet.
because it's just right there in the middle of the city.
Yeah, Robert, there was somebody killed. We
A
actually
couple weeks ago.
yeah,
we
Brad,
talked about it.
we talked about this on a previous Liberty Libations with I don't remember who was on it, but somebody else was. And we did a whole thing I did a Free Georgia podcast on this. On this exact topic for 45 minutes. I talked about it because it's pretty ridiculous because once again, propaganda from the liberal media, the Daily Show, came down and did a whole segment in this forest with these protesters and made it seem like they're the most peaceful, loving, and like only love nature kind of people. And it's just the biggest load of crap in the world because they're setting traps. They literally have weapons, so they're like willing to use them. And there's really just no good reason for them to be there. Honestly, they're occupying public land that they have no right to occupy. It's just a whole bunch of BS.
Do you remember who it was that did the report from the Daily Show? Was it a fat black girl?
No, it was a dude. It was a black guy.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
The funniest
I know
part
somebody who's on the Daily Show from Atlanta who spreads a lot of propaganda through the Daily Show. I was wondering if it was her.
Gotcha.
The funniest part of that whole thing was after the dude got killed and they had that protest.
Yeah.
And CNN did the fiery but mostly peaceful meme. He's standing there with a car on fire in the background, telling you, "Yeah, mostly peaceful down here."
Well, and Buckhead, Georgia, has a good story of that too. It was during the George Floyd riots during 2020. The city of Atlanta just totally neglected this area.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was just mobs.
They stopped building stuff too, right?
They were blocking interstate exits.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, because I remember I was going up to the mountains that one day and I heard about it on the radio, and I was able to get behind GSP, and GSP was doing just cruising at 110 because these folks are blocking the. And I'm hearing it on the radio. I was like, "There's 3 exits north of me. Oh my god!" And so I just followed them. They didn't do anything about it because they had 400 protesters on their hands.
Yeah,
I just cruised onto the mountains. I got from Fayette County to Hiawassee in like hour and a half. It was awesome.
That is impressive. You can never do
But
that.
I mean, they just destroyed Buckhead. People died as well. There were some folks that were there protesting in solidarity with these mobs and got trampled and killed. It's single digits, but
I had a guy I worked with who he was splitting his time between Buckhead and the Chicago area, and he sold his place in Buckhead because he said during those riots, like him and some of his neighbors, saw some riffraff getting out of the car, all blacked out, and they grabbed their rifles and they went down and said, "No, you're getting out of here."
Yeah,
they want Atlanta to be like a hub, like an international hub, like that. I think Atlanta is targeted for this whole Great Reset type thing.
I am curious to hear why you think that, because I think that as well.
Well, I can tell you it's probably part of it, at least, is going to creep in through the zoning departments. So, if you really care about the stuff, there's a cadre of folks that meet once a month at your local county office, and they tell you what you can and can't do with your own yard.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
And that's I promise you that's how it all starts.
One of the more asinine things in general. the zoning stuff. But
Brad, what are your thoughts on it since you brought it up?
I've worked in the film industry. I know you have too, Jake. They've kind of made Atlanta like another Hollywood, and they've kind of transformed the demographic in Atlanta. And then they bring Stacey Abrams in to change it to purple, as they call it. And they even talk about how the city of Atlanta is very different from the rural areas that they'd like to get out, and they'd kind of like to change those areas as well. I just for whatever reason, I know we have the busiest airport in the world, but it's always been an international hub. And when Kasim Reed was mayor here, he was one of the 100 mayors as part of I don't know if it's World Economic Forum, but it was one of these global operations where it was one of these 100 mayor programs trying to, bring in the new world through their position as a mayor. And I just think for why, I don't know, but Atlanta's been targeted to be transformed and kind of be at the center of this this reset, I think. And I think it's going to continue.
I think you're right. I mean, why else would they bring Brian Kemp to Davos this year? Like,
right.
They did the exact same thing with somebody from Atlanta, and like, we talked about this too. How Kemp brought all these companies to Atlanta that specialize in environmentally friendly creations. So like all these battery makers and like electric car makers and all these things.
I love that batteries became synonymous with green, which is like crazy.
Oh, and just watch, because solar farms are about to start popping up left and right. Yeah. There's a lot of agricultural land, and it's where the federal subsidies are going.
Right.
It makes way more sense to have 1,000 acres of solar panels than it does soybeans or corn.
Dude, where was that? I just saw a photo of some town in, I think it was like, was it Norway, Netherlands, somewhere in Europe, where a company came in, bought up all the acreage around this town, put in solar panels surrounding all the town, all the houses, everything, and the dollar value of the houses dropped to almost nothing because no one wanted to live there. And the people
and they have to build these things typically in migratory bird patterns as well. And I know there's another big nationally recognized solar farm in Arizona. They call them streamers. There's some type of bird that migrates over the solar farm on an annual basis. They call them streamers because half of them burst into flames while they're flying over it. Because it's a magnifying glass on the ground shooting the sun back up at them.
Yeah, how terrifying that would be, especially if you're like a child.
Yeah.
What the heck?
I think they fly over them too, really close, because from above it looks like glistening water, and they go to like land on the water, and they get close to it, and it's hot or whatever.
That's horrifying.
That is horrifying.
But it
so
looks like a
same with the windows. You have to build those where the wind is strong. Birds like that too.
Yeah.
Wood chipper.
I thought when a bird flies into the window because it sees itself and then drops, I thought that was bad.
Yeah.
Right.
One at a time. Imagine a whole flock with you.
Just a flaming ball coming down from the sky.
Right.
Terrifying.
Look at the bird. Ah!
Have you ever seen the solar farm outside of Las Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's about to pop up in almost every state in the union. Obviously not, like Rhode Island or Connecticut, but
not
look, I'm okay with it being in the middle of the desert. Fine. I don't give a crap. Nothing's out there anyway. Kill all the birds out there. I don't care.
Yeah. But those big corn, cotton, and soybean farms you used to drive past in the South over the next 10, 20 years. There's so much federal money going to that.
Yeah.
That is the issue. Like, people always think that like giving tax breaks and things like that to new technologies that are green and crap like that is a good thing. That's why it's a bad thing. It's going to run out all the things
has
that
to
we
pay
actually
property
need.
taxes. That calendar year, if that farmer has to pay property taxes, he's done.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's selling at least half the farm.
Areas too. They want to get everybody connected to the web when it comes to the rural areas. They want to bring everybody in, and they want it's the Obama phones. So that they have. I was watching this panel discussion the other day where they were talking about the Meta headsets and getting everybody into the metaverse so they could have them. They want to deliver news through the metaverse because if you can give people a real experience of history that they feel in their body, even if it's a lie, they'll think they were there.
I was just going to say real
yeah,
in
right,
quotes,
exactly.
like, yeah.
Right. So they can make up that, and it bypasses people's intellectual brain. They can't like critically think about it. And
if you tap into the emotional center, you'll
yeah,
trigger
absolutely,
a response
totally.
better. Yeah.
And that's the idea behind it. And we're talking how it won't be long. They'll have everybody connected, and they'll have everybody having at least a smartphone. So we'll have the baseline. Everybody will at least be able to connect that way, and it won't be long. I don't think the headset thing is going to work because it's annoying to have in your face. But I think they're going for the AR technology as what.
Remember, what was it, Google Glass that they tried to do for a while?
Yeah.
But
They're bringing it back.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Contact
Yeah, of course
lenses,
that was only getting shelved for a limited time.
Right.
Look, Joey
just
is he's saying it's conspiracy theory that birds aren't real.
I
but
thought
that was proven.
Yeah, I was about to say birds aren't real.
Whoa.
Birds aren't real.
Pretty sure.
Russian propaganda.
It's not the solar panels bursting them into flames. It's the lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. The Obama phone subsidy now applied to broadband. It's a $35 credit.
Exactly. Yeah.
See,
is it
so-
really? Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Totally.
I'll
I didn't know
bet
that.
you guys would get down with this or whatever, but like every time I see the subsidy thing, it's the similar thing of like if you introduce one invasive species to like take care of another invasive species, and you think that that's going to do it, and then that needs another one to eat it, and the subsidy thing just like it always creates more problems than solutions, and it's like a short-term solution band-aid that creates a long-term solution or a problem chain.
But most of the time, it's literally just to quell the screamings of a tiny minority of people. Like
right.
To
get the most attention.
Yes, it's like the smallest amount of people want like all these green technologies and no gas. It's like 10 to 20% maybe want that. But they're creating all these subsidies for those 10 to 20% of people that want that. And so all these other companies who have nothing to do with that and have no interest in being in that business now see that they can make a lot more money and pay way fewer taxes than they did before by getting into those industries.
Well, it's like that with everything, though, right? I mean, you have, let's say, the subsidized American sugar industry.
Yeah.
Subsidizing subsidizing Florida sugar, which is then, causing all sorts of environmental damage, red tides, all the other stuff.
Yeah.
In Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah, but
I don't know about that. But...
so we pay more for sugar here than just about anywhere else because of that, and you get a healthy side of it, actual environmental destruction. So
or like ethanol based corn growth as opposed to like corn for eating or whatever, and like I'm not saying you can't use ethanol fuel or whatever, I'm just saying by artificially propping up a whole crop, then it's a cash crop kind of a thing, and farmers are artificially incentivized to grow one certain thing. Then you're shipping in your food corn from South America, which
and then
causes how much gas does that use to get here? Like it just doesn't.
And then you
make sense.
have to find solutions to put, like you have to find things to put your corn into. So that's why there's corn in everything
that do that.
That's why the average American under 40 is what 2/3 corn genetically. Something like that. Like it's
you are what you eat. Yeah. Or
they do a lot of that subsidizing with the internet stuff under the guise of equality too.
It's always under a guise, and there's an agenda, and it manipulates people through the emotional center again of like to sign off on it and to approve it, but don't go into the gray area of like, oh, this is in 10 years, this is going to cause that same community these many more problems than solutions. But
right.
And some of it may not be the intention at first, right? So, like, if you read Dr. Bill Davis, he's one of the top preventive cardiologists in the country. He wrote a book, in the early 2000s, Wheat Belly. That's why the gluten-free trend started exploding. Was one of those. His book was at least at the forefront. He was, in the front three of those, leading that way. And he just talks about the Norman Borlaug, this guy Norman Borlaug. After World War II, he got a Nobel Peace Prize. He genetically spliced the Japanese dwarf wheat with the American waving amber grains, that you hear about in Mark Twain poems and all that stuff. And this wasn't selectively crossbreeding. This was, genetically splicing under a microscope, just so we're clear. And he put this stuff out, and no one ever said, hey, did we test this first? Because half of our men were at war in World War II. And so they were like, whatever, we just got to feed people. Let's do this. We have so much less people, but we still got to feed a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
And so they just started rolling the stuff out, and then they do studies. And that's why some of these issues are starting to arise. You know, the
See-
celiac disease is because they're not tolerating this genetically spliced
Yeah.
grain.
They
And-
probably
and-
knew they were going to do it and used the guise of
Yeah,
war to
yeah.
roll
Never
it
let a
out.
good
like,
crisis go to waste.
Yeah,
And that's what he was
That's
talking about in his
true.
book is, you know, it was an unintended consequence, but at a certain point they knew and they sat on it
Right.
because it was making money.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Speaking of sitting on things because they're making money.
What? Wait a minute.
Wait, yeah. Oh no, where's this going?
Not exactly what you think. Mises Caucus tweeted this out. Man on the left is Christian Anderson, a British scientist who emailed Fauci on January 31st of 20 saying the virus looks lab made. Man on the right is Christian Anderson, the guy who Fauci called on February 1st and ordered him to publicly say it wasn't lab made, which he did. Fauci then gave him $1.88 million grant and $16.5 million funding.
I'm sure those things are unrelated.
I just can't believe you guys are so anti-Fauci.
And yeah, whatever.
Fauci's been a liar his entire career.
Yeah.
Since
Entire
day
career.
one.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's
Well, and didn't
crazy.
he, he squashed another
Why is
career. There's
gaslighting
another one of the
trending?
doctors that he intimidated in the 90s. Was it Judy Mikovits, I think it is?
Yeah,
She had this
I know
theory
story.
that there was the XMRV virus that was in, I forget which vaccine it was, but she was saying there was some kind of retrovirus. There was a specific retrovirus in there that was causing chronic fatigue syndrome in women or something like that. And it was a peer-reviewed study, but he wasn't getting paid, and so he told her to squash it, and she didn't, and he had her put in jail.
Wow.
Had her law license revoked, all that kind of stuff, and she wrote a
Yeah.
book about it while she was in jail.
Wow.
And now she's out, and she's a doctor again, apparently.
Wow. Good for her.
Yeah.
There's also his work with like, what is it, the AIDS virus or whatever, and he fought to have it classified as a certain kind of disease because it would give him and his department a lot of money if it was classified a certain way and all of that. And that was like in the 80s, so it's like every decade he's got his finger in a new pie or whatever. But
Yeah. No, he's absolutely terrible person. I haven't read that. Somebody wrote a book about him recently, right?
It was,
RFK Jr.
yeah,
RFK
thank you.
Jr. Yeah, I haven't read that yet, but
I have it around here, but yeah, I haven't. I have a lot of books I haven't gotten around to reading. but
there are just so many good ones coming out right now. I haven't even
thought
read The
about-
White Pill yet. That gummit.
Neither have I, and it's sitting on the table behind me.
I thought about getting that book for my dad because he's like a huge like just Kennedy fan or whatever, but he's like so like pro vaccine and all that. And I was like, it's in that weird gray area that I'm like, I don't know if it would be seen as like a peace offering though, as a jab. I have no idea. So like I decided not to do it. But
Yeah, that's fair. That's a tough line to walk.
I'm gonna share
Yeah.
a photo of Fauci with you guys real quick.
Please do.
There you go. That was made by Stella, a listener of the show. I think me and Cam were going back and forth and called him Modoc. Is that the name of the character?
That's
Modoc.
so
Yeah.
I can hear and smell this picture.
no.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I only have one more video left to watch. I rarely ever show anything that's truly like happy or joyful, and this is going to continue to be in the vein. But it is kind of bittersweet. It shows you the happiness of a man being free, and also the cruelty of a unjust justice system. So,
Yeah.
The last 25 years of his life, much of it in prison, has all led up to this moment.
In the District Court of El Paso County, Texas, 409th Judicial District, the state of Texas versus Daniel Villegas, number 94-0D09328. Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
I mean, goodness
For
gracious.
the first time since he
was in jail for 25 years.
Yeah.
Went to
wow.
jail at 16.
That's a rough jump because then he comes out and everyone thinks he's in his 40s. And in his mind, he's,
He's probably
maybe 20.
Maybe 20. Yeah. 20 in some ways, and then like much, much older in other ways.
Yeah.
Thank goodness he's out, but you're right. What a
Golly. Well, there's a
what
guy
an
that
awful thing.
Yeah.
almost
What
made
did
it on
he
the
do?
Falcons. The guy that was falsely accused of rape, and he did 2-3 years in prison.
I know about this story actually. Yeah, the guy
He was a stud in
awesome.
college, and then
Monster,
he was
yeah.
about to be drafted, and then
Did
these
he
false
play-
charges came up, and he did years in prison.
Yeah.
Lost his physical peak to being in prison.
Jeez.
Talking about Aaron Hernandez.
It's an NFL contract.
No, I know the story. I've seen interviews with him, and he's also such a cool, chill, sweet guy. It was really sad to see his whole future taken away. Right at the peak of his athletic career, I think he played.
Yeah.
Was it Canadian or what was the other league that he ended up finally kind of being able to do? But no one would take him when he got out either. There's physically, athletically, and then there's the politically, we don't want to be seen as the team that took this person, even when he was out.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this. Me and my wife or one of my friends were talking about this. How, you're encouraged to not forgive people anymore. There's
don't like this.
no
Yeah.
forgiveness whatsoever. You have to hold on to that grudge. You have to make sure that they pay for what they've done to you.
Right.
And it that only leads to some pretty terrible
If you
places.
forgive them, you can't be the victim anymore.
Or the sincere apology, if you're actually just ripping your own heart out of your chest, telling, I did something wrong, I didn't mean to, and then they just feel this knee jerk to just clap back.
Mm.
No, let me tell you what you did wrong 4 more times.
We had mentioned community living and smaller stuff, and then we had talked about Native American briefly there, but one of the things that's always fascinated me, it's not every tribe, but it's many tribes will do more of their system is not a punitive system, but it's a reconciliation system. And it's if you steal whatever from someone, they sit both parties down and they're hey, what would you think is fair? What would you think is fair? Asking both sides, and then they're work something out, and then it's from then it's shake hands, we're done, we move on. But the punitive thing is it trains the person who wronged to see themselves as a criminal. It trains the rest of the world to see them as that, and then there's it's a forever loop thing.
The
There's no
doppelganger
growth.
effect. Yeah. I've actually used this argument as a young teen. Yeah, the system's telling me I'm bad, so I must be bad.
Right.
That's why I'm back here a year later.
Like a kid who gets branded as a bad
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. If you guys back off and give me a shot, I might do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that first impression they put on. They've done all these kind of psychological, social science studies on it. That first impression is the strongest and most lasting impression, and it takes just a lot of work to overcome that
To
first
undo
impression.
that.
And
Yeah. Do you know how long it takes to build a first impression usually too? It's
a couple seconds.
It's
very
15
quickly.
seconds or something. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
It's just super irrational, but it's good to know about ourselves so that we can try to overcome it and learn about it, whatever. But it's built into all people, which is
Right. Yeah.
annoying.
But you're right though. It's if you know about it, then we can check ourselves.
It's the best tool, I think. Yeah. To be aware of it and because then you have to choose to accept it in your own self, and then you can try to at least be aware of it and then notice when it's happening. You know what I mean? It's like a meditative kind of a thing almost.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to get super woo about it, but
get woo, dude.
How would you go about that's people seem to be trying to fix things with government, and I just don't see how that's going to be doable, especially that particular problem.
Not with this system of government.
It's got to be a cultural thing, which is, I mean, there's just no possible way that 300 and something whatever million Americans can come together and be okay, we'll start forgiving each other now, and we'll start agreeing on certain things and respecting people's opinions.
What if
that's just never going to happen?
The first line of defense for a crime, for instance, was to allow the two parties, well, let's assume there's two parties involved, to work it out between themselves first before you get the law. And if you can't reach a reconciliation between those two parties, then it falls to the law. Do you know what I mean?
Can they reconcile in whatever way they choose? Can they duke it out in a boxing ring or do a duel?
It gets hairy. I don't know. Yeah, a duel.
Hey, 2 consenting adults, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I think it starts with
to
breaking people from the propaganda spell, because the whole propaganda that we're ambushed with is divide and conquer propaganda.
Yeah.
And they insert the conflict. They insist that it be about race. They insist that it be about gender. And so we're not going to escape it from them. The way to escape it is to bring awareness to what they're doing.
and that the only
Yeah.
solution is through the systems that be, you
Exactly.
know, like and
Right.
not outside of that. Yeah.
Oh. Brad, you working on anything interesting right now?
I'm just doing the show, and that's about it. I do the show 3-4 days a week at propagandafight.com is my website. I'm at Freedom Act Radio on Twitter, youtube.com/Brad Binkley. I've been trying to do some more. I used to do a lot of comedy shorts. I'm trying to get back into doing some more of that. So
Nice.
check out my YouTube page if you want to see some of that when it comes out. But other than that, just check out the podcast. I'm just trying to expose the propaganda as best I can.
Heck yeah, I love that. We like that here at LP Georgia. Nick, do we have anything we need to promote? Because I'm out of topics unless y'all had topics you want to talk about. Steven, you might have something up your sleeve. Did you have something you wanted to?
I mean, we could talk about the Murdoch case. Y'all been watching that?
I just
I've
saw
not-
I only heard that the verdict came
yeah,
in.
Yeah. You know what I found interesting about that is that there's a Netflix series
Oh, yeah.
on at
Just
the same
came out,
time
like,
as the real
yesterday?
trials going on.
Yeah,
I thought that sounded familiar.
that's right.
Interesting.
Just in time for the jury to make a decision.
What
Isn't
do
that
you think?
insane?
Is he,
Yeah.
I don't know much about it.
I just
I don't either.
the way the documentary portrays it, this dude's an absolute creep, just
Seems like
corrupt as they come, plugged in with local politics, above the law, and he's been killing folks for 30 years and it finally caught up to him.
That's like a family's been in power like 100
Really?
years through
Yeah.
the legal system, right?
Interesting.
Because it all started his son got in a boating accident and killed some girl, right?
Right. No, it
And
didn't
then,
start there. It started 10 years before that when people started turning up dead in their town
Jeez.
and
Really?
their name was somehow tied to it. And then all of a sudden the case just went cold.
That'll do it.
Yeah, because I know. Yeah, then I had heard it back to his son killing a girl in a boating accident, and then like
That was the
he-
thing that
and, like,
triggered all this. That's what started the whole
Yeah, and
murder
then
investigation. But there was 3
then him
cases that
and
were
his-
reopened
yeah,
because of that.
and then like he had someone shoot him as a right. He got shot because he paid someone to do that to throw people off his trail or
Oh,
something.
right. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Oh.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally know nothing about any of this. Every
I don't
single
know about
bit
this,
of
yeah.
information you're saying is brand new to me. I barely
only
even
thing-
know what that there. I didn't even know there was a case happening. I don't even know what y'all are talking about, really.
See, the only way I know about it is from, I'm like, I've seen this, and I'm like, it's Netflix. And I'm like, we could have a whole show, we could have 18 shows just devoted to, like, the timing of things and the propaganda within,
You're right.
like, Hollywood
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
they
it's
did the same thing
insane.
with Epstein. They had this
Yeah.
thing released, and then they were talking about that in the news and everything. And now Ghislaine Maxwell is trying to like have her.
There
have
was
her
a movie-
sentence thrown out and shit.
So
Did y'all
we talked
see the
about
photo
this.
that got released of her while she was in jail? And she
Yeah.
had this like super red dot in the inner corner of her eye.
Yeah.
Like she'd just gotten a lobotomy.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
see that. I played some clips of an interview she did from jail with 60 Minutes Australia. a couple
I
months
just-
ago.
Okay.
I just listened to that show, actually,
yeah, she's like,
like an hour ago, yeah.
she's like, yeah, no, it was all the. She's trying to claim the photo was made up of the what's her name, Guffrey and the prince, and it was
Right.
doctored. But she presents no evidence of it, and
And then 60 Minutes doesn't even have a follow-up
they
question
don't even follow
for
up.
it.
Yeah,
What the
like, no follow up question there.
But 60
like,
Minutes even confirmed his sweating condition that
Yeah,
she
he
described in
sweats.
court.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
totally. Some
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm glad we figured that out, yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Alden, I would love to have more shows. If we get more viewers and just get this thing actually making money, I would love to do some deep dives and actually like analyze a whole bunch of stuff and
Dude, I
have like
have-
a show every night. That'd be
I'm
fun.
not even kidding. I have folders on my wall that are just stuffed full of. I take notes when I watch movies, and I'm like, "That's some
I
bullshit."
do
Like,
too.
and
It's
I'm,
funny.
no way, dude. I watch things. I watch some movies because I'm like, I think they'll be good, and I watch 90% of movies out of like research and duty to know what's going on. Like,
I hate watch some stuff.
I also had a cubicle job a few years ago that I knew was a dead end. And I've got boxes of sticky notes of all the
Yeah.
podcasts and stuff I was listening to.
Yeah.
And then I'd follow up and research it that night because
Yeah,
I was that awesome.
Yeah. You're like angrily or drunkenly or whatever your state is, like scribbling down like,
Right.
fuck this, like,
Yeah, people get
Well, it's
mad
also
at me
like,
when I watch shit with
you
them,
know,
too.
Going back
Yeah.
to the East Palestine thing, there was that Netflix movie that came out.
Yeah,
So-
the Adam Driver
Yeah.
one. whatever
we
that
had
one
just
was.
talked about that, the White Noise movie or whatever.
White Noise. Yeah.
I think it came out a year ago or something like that,
Yeah.
but it was
It came out.
just put on
said it
Netflix.
was-
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
recent. Like, It's super recent, and
I mean,
it's like it's the plot of what happened. Like,
but it's also
insane.
we did talk about this last week or 2 weeks ago that like they're like what was it 2,200 12 like 1,800
The past 3 years, there's
derailments
like
a year.
1,700 average the past 3 years, and I did actually looked at the state by state thing, and number 3 was Ohio in the past. So one every 4 days in Ohio the past 3 years.
Well, and like derailment is like a very, very broad term.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
because
and
I
we-
worked in the railroad industry.
Oh,
Like we did rail. We made products for the railroads, and you know, we had a spur coming into the plant, and like it was a shitty little spur, and there was nothing at the end to stop it.
What's a spur?
It's just a little bit of track coming off of the line, coming into the yard, into the plant's yard, and that's so they can just push a train car up in there, and then, you know, we can unload it. And I believe one time, because the plant manager was complaining about it because they had to take the car away before it was unloaded, but they pushed it too far, and there was no bumper at the end of the rail or anything. It was just kind of went into the ground, and the wheels of the car touched the ground. Therefore,
And
it was a
they have to
derailment.
count
They had
that
to
as
go.
derailment.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, interesting.
Even
And
though all
the
they
train
back it up.
died of COVID. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the COVID death. Yeah.
So that car what came off of the rail, so they had to go take it back for inspection.
Right.
Interesting.
oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there are definitely some major derailments every single year, and like chemical trains do it all the time too. This isn't an isolated event, is all I'm trying to say. And and I'm just trying not to make it out to be like this is the beginning of a conspiracy or anything like that. Like these things happen more regularly than
That's
people.
my job.
Yeah,
I'll say
that-
that.
And it's because the rail has not gone updated for a century.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I agree with you on that one. I'm so that movie, I think it's because they'll film movies in areas if they can that where stuff like that tends to happen, and so I'm the one where they did the vaccine movie starring Cusack, the vaccine TV show. That one to me was a little more creepy.
What's the name of that one?
Oh, I don't know that one.
It was from a couple of years ago, and it came out. So the day that I can't remember the name of the show, but I'll type in Cusack and see. But they wrapped production on the show 2 days before Event 201 started.
Oh,
which was a little weird.
that's good timing.
But the show was about Utopia. It was Utopia.
Oh, yeah,
And it was about a billionaire who is causing a pandemic so he can put a vaccine on everybody that makes them unable to have babies.
I haven't hate watched that one yet.
Yeah, no, I hate
because
watching that one, definitely.
shows are hard to do because they're just so long, you know. But
Right. yeah.
I'm gonna steal this term now.
So Brad, you did hate watch that one. How did you get through it? Okay.
It's interesting to watch. It's not bad. They
I
were
mean, John
gonna do
Cusack's a good actor. So.
Yeah, he is. They were going to do a season 2, and they didn't because of the backlash.
Well, because now it's too on the nose. Like
yeah,
it's
it
really
was
interesting.
really on the nose too. And I did look up that production date. They stopped like 2 days before Event 201.
See, I've seen so many of these things where it's like Facebook created the day that like the CAA equivalent program is like the day after or the day of that it's like, you know, folded or whatever, or like so many things like that where it's like within 2 days of something.
Yeah, and like when it comes to movies and shows, like I don't know, there's something about science that always imitates, or maybe not science, but like innovation kind of imitates people's imagination. So like a lot of things that people made in like sci-fi movies or like futuristic movies in the 50s are happening today because people were like, oh, that's an interesting idea, and like people actually tried to make it happen.
I bet
And, like,
that's an effect. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'm wondering like how much of that, like, are there people behind the scenes going, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I will release this pandemic across the world.
I think so. I think that does have an effect on it. And then there's like the CIA helps write. So Homeland, the show, the CIA, I think starting in season 3, wrote basically the rest of Homeland.
That's why it started sucking.
Right,
yeah, you can tell when it starts to take over like this. Do you know how many? It's not just things that deal in like CIA and military though, but there's thousands of films and shows that have been tampered with by the CIA.
It's like 60 to 75% of all movies and TV shows have some type of government involvement.
Totally.
the bigger the franchise, the more that
It's
is.
a channel of communication, and any channel of communication that reaches the most amount of people to influence them, they're gonna try and get in there and affect it in some way.
24 was pitched to Fox by the U.S. government to help them sell the war in Afghanistan.
Who are you working for?
It was a good show, though.
It was a good show.
See, but it works best.
I love
when
Torture.
It is a decent
Torture's
show.
great.
The new Jurassic Park, whatever, Dominion World,
Oh,
whatever the
awful.
hell.
Yeah.
It's so bad. But like the CIA had a literal role in the movie. Like,
Right.
oh my god.
I wish
Anyway,
Chris Pratt would take some better movies these
Yeah.
days.
he's getting that good money though, man.
So frustrating. All right, we're about to wrap up, but we're gonna promote a couple things again. This one, it's a rally in honor of Duncan Lemp. Nick, you want to give a quick brief as to what happened to Duncan Lemp?
Yeah, so Duncan Lemp was a young guy who, for some reason or another, cops thought he had guns he shouldn't have had. I don't believe he shouldn't have had them. Like, I thought he was allowed to have them. That's kind of ambiguous. But still, I mean, he was not a criminal or anything like that. So, yeah, so somehow neighbors or someone reported him to the cops. They did a no-knock raid at his house in the middle of the night, shot him in bed next to his pregnant girlfriend. And this happened a couple years ago, about the same time the Breonna Taylor one happened, and that got all the press, and everyone forgot about the Duncan Lemp story here. So, yeah, this was getting shared around Mises Caucus chats and stuff like that, and I think some LP affiliates are jumping in and doing a rally here in honor of this, because it's been one of those stories that's been buried, and you know, no one's had to answer why a guy who was sleeping in bed got shot through a window.
Right. Yeah. So if you're anywhere near Rockville, Maryland, or someone you know, make sure they know that there's a rally on March 12th at 11 a.m. For this guy. Yeah, truly tragic story. I mean,
how many no-knock raids gone wrong do we need before we see that as a bad idea?
Seriously, yeah.
It's absolutely bonkers.
No, and Maryland's one of the red flag states too, because I know there's been, a lot of their, state and local policemen died because they're being ordered to kick in these doors of, veterans playing video games and
for
cussing.
both parts. Yeah, it's not a good idea. Yeah.
And so they kick in the door. The guy takes out 3 of them on his way down, and it's just that's 4, deaths that didn't need to happen.
Yep, and that's the
Biden
thing. They
just
don't
made
need
an
to
announcement
happen.
trying to push that nationwide. The red flag laws a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I didn't see that.
Oh yeah. No, they keep everybody safer. It's great.
Well, I want red pin laws, right? So, if you pass legislation or if you allocate government money that is then used in the direct commission of a violent crime, you're liable as well.
Ah, I like that.
How about that?
That's interesting.
Yeah, let's have the
that would be our
whole,
clapback to what they're trying to do with guns right now. Just.
Yeah, let's have the legislators pass legislation that will hurt themselves.
Yeah.
That's the way government works.
It'd be nice,
I like the idea, Stephen. The
Yeah.
implementation I find next to impossible.
Yeah. In the meantime, I would just encourage you to, attend your local zoning meetings and, that kind of thing. Because, these are folks you bump into at the grocery store that are telling you what you can and can't do with your yard.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. And again, we got to keep pushing the Great Create, because this thing is getting a lot bigger, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Brad, I think Zach's going to contact you about doing something there. So Zach Barnell.
Cool.
Yeah.
But
we're trying to get people out. But yeah, this is going to be a great event. There's not too much like this in Georgia, and especially coming out of the LP. This is one of the biggest outreach events I think we've ever put together.
Yes.
Awesome.
And we basically took our, boring regular convention, turned it into a 2-day festival with the boring stuff on the last day where people aren't really invited. So come out to the good stuff. Yes, come out to the good stuff. May 12th and 13th are the main days where people will have, let's see. I interviewed Kristen Hammock on Monday on the Free Georgia podcast. She's a goat dairy and cheese making expert of Hammock Haven Farm. We've got Alan Carroll, Seth Chadwick, Dave Miller's coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks. All these folks, I believe, are coming on the Free Georgia podcast at some point over the next couple months to talk about their businesses and tell what they're going to be doing while they're at the Great Create. We'll have some live podcasts. Got some comedians coming. We're going to show some films and show some of Daywalker Comedy's sketches. Yeah, I mean, we just got a lot of great people coming out to give talks and demonstrations and all sorts of stuff. So if you can make it out to Perry, Georgia, May 12th and 13th, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, it's a bit out there, but I mean, you know,
it's not too far. It's not too far. It's like an hour from Atlanta.
Yeah,
it's far for me.
It's not too far, but
if you ever wanted to drive to Florida, you're halfway there.
Alden, you're not invited to any of this stuff anyway. No, I'll
be out there this summer. But...
You know, the LP doesn't have a ton of money, so
it's true.
We run this on a shoestring budget, and we're trying to find sponsorships everywhere we can, find people to do things, trade off anything we can to try to make something like this happen, and not only provide something of value for the community, but also hopefully get something in value back to keep the party running. Fund candidates, fund training, fund everything we have to be able to pay for and do. We're even I've been in discussions with Zach a little bit about how do we even go further as far as more outreach, getting money in for that. So there's never enough money for what we need, but
never.
I mean, it looks like you guys got a great lineup. Looks like it's gonna be good.
It should be pretty fun. I think we're going all out this year to try to grow it the first year, or make it big the first year, so we can keep that momentum going over the next few years and kind of turn it into a big deal throughout Georgia. So we'll see how it goes. Should be a fun time. Yeah, Brad, why don't you shout out your stuff one more time so people know where to find you?
At Freedom Act Radio on Twitter, youtube.com/Brad Binkley, excuse me. And Propaganda Report podcast on any app that you listen to. Also propagandafight.com. You can find all of my links there as well.
Awesome. Brad, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Absolutely.
Good to meet
y'all.
You.
We'll see y'all next Thursday. Tune into the Free Georgia podcast. There won't be one this week, but there will be one next week. So keep tuning in.
March Madness?
No, I'm shooting a movie in Nashville. So yeah, I'm up there this week. So there we go. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week.